Hey, everybody. If you're listening to this, you are listening to the first free hour of this episode of The Shift with Doug McKenty. If you like what you're hearing, please consider subscribing to the show in order to access the full feature-length versions of the podcast, as well as have access to the members forum, where we discuss potential topics and interviews and dive deep into the overall concept of The Shift. For only $6 a month, not only do you get the full-length episodes, but also an opportunity to co-create with me, your host, Doug McKenty, the future of the show. Go to www.theshiftnow.com or patreon.com/theshift and sign up today in order to help make the shift possible. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Good morning, noon, or night, wherever and whenever you are listening to The Shift. I'm your host. My name is Doug McKenty. This episode was recorded on October 29th, 2021. I'm happy to announce that my guest on the program today is the one and only Elana Freeland. Elana has been researching the behind-the-scenes maneuvering of the military-industrial complex for decades and has now been able to connect the dots between the macro world of geoengineering and the micro world of nanotechnology. Like the Oracle from the Matrix series, Elana predicts the future through an uncanny ability to understand the past. Her explorations into the vast network of corporate and government agencies clearly developing technologies of mass population control, transhumanism, and weather manipulation allow her to paint a big picture, which includes the endgame of full-spectrum dominance. In previous books, including Chemtrails, HAARP, and the Full-Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth, as well as Under an Ionized Sky, Elana exposes a concerted effort by those controlling the creation of military technologies to utilize the entire spectrum of electromagnetic frequency waves to interfere, not only with the natural forces of weather creation, but also the electromagnetic system which influences many processes within the human body. She also describes the dual-use function of many of these technologies which expand their implementation beyond the battlefield for applications within the civilian population. Her new book, Geoengineered Transhumanism, completes the trilogy showing how, after decades in the making, these new technologies are capable of literally interfacing with the mechanically augmented Human 2.0, fully integrated within a virtual metaverse managed by artificial intelligence. While many of these claims are hard to believe, Elana's careful observation of peer-reviewed scientific studies and patent applications makes clear that these technologies have been the focus of billions of dollars worth of research and development funds spent in the post-World War II era. Once seen, this information cannot be unseen. Elana's work clearly exposes a massive effort towards the creation of a society based on the control of the many for the benefit of the few. Modern technologies are now capable of affecting the human ability to exercise free will at the most fundamental levels. Stay tuned for this conversation that reveals the details of this plan and discusses what we can do about it. Though many seem enthralled by the prospect of human augmentation, and perhaps unknowingly participate in the creation of the modern technocratic panopticon, there are options for those who choose to cling to organic life and individual expression over collective exploitation. Elana explains how an understanding of the function of life-affirming etheric energy, once common knowledge within the scientific community, can counterbalance the mechanizing effects of the electromagnetism favored by the controlling class. Through the cultivation of this life energy and detoxification of the body from the effects of electromagnetism and nanotechnology, we can maintain control over ourselves and remain free to choose a life of harmony with nature over immersion in the machine world currently under construction. If you haven't already, I urge all of my listeners to take a deep dive into the work of Elana Freeland. Find out more at www.elanafreeland.com. As always, please like, subscribe, and share this interview throughout your social media networks. We rely on listeners like you to distribute this important information. To sign up for the newsletter, discover hours of free content, or subscribe for feature-length versions of the show, go to www.theshiftnow.com. You can also find The Shift with Doug McKenty on Facebook, YouTube, Rockfin, Telegram, and at @dmckenty on Twitter for more information about the program. Without further ado, I'd like to thank Elana Freeland for agreeing to this interview, and thank you for helping to make the shift. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 98th episode of The Shift. I'm your host, Doug McKenty, and I am so happy today to be joined by Elana Freeland. Elana Freeland is the author of multiple books, Chemtrails, HAARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth, Under an Ionized Sky, From Chemtrails to Space Fence Lockdown, and the new one that is coming out here very shortly, Geoengineered Transhumanism, How the Environment Has Been Weaponized by Chemicals, Electromagnetics, and Nanotechnology for Synthetic Biology. So what we're going to be talking about today is the full spectrum dominance that these guys have built around us, and they're implementing on a larger scale now than ever before. But what's really exciting for me is to have this conversation about how the macro, the geoengineering, is connected to the micro, the nanotechnology, and even some of the MK Ultra trauma bonding, controlling types of experiments that have been going on now for decades. It all seems to be coming to a head, and Elana has really nailed it, I think, with this new book in terms of allowing us to really see the big picture of what's going on now and what has been going on for a long time. So, Elana, thanks for coming on the show. Welcome. Do you want to just give my audience a little bit about your background and why you wanted to write these books?
Sure, Doug. I always wanted to be a writer since I was a little girl, and I think I was accused of plagiarism. The first time was when I was 8 years old, and my teacher said I had copied the story from somewhere. So I just didn't think that I would be doing this kind of writing because I didn't really understand the era I was living in when I was younger. So through all the 60s, I came of age in the 60s. I had tea with President Kennedy in the Rose Garden 3 months before he was murdered like a dog in Dallas. And that really began my political sensibility for the weighing that personal life versus public life. And I would say that I am pretty much I've never been very good at the personal life, truthfully, other than a lot of reading. Uh, but I am pretty good in the public life, and so I very much feel that what I've been studying and observing for over half a century is really coming to a head now. And it all fits together. And I certainly didn't know that when I first started writing Chemtrails HAARP back in 2012. That was when we had the great conference in LA called Consciousness Beyond Chemtrails. And I met all the luminaries of that movement at that time. I was a nobody. I was a friend of Clifford Carnicom, the independent scientist who started in the 90s examining what he was collecting coming from the wake of jets over northern New Mexico. He never thought it was contrails. He knew what a chemical signature looked like in the sky, and he recognized immediately that these were chemical trails, not condensation water trails. So he became a really good friend, and I did some work when I was living in England for Adam Parfrey at Feral House Press. And Adam then asked me if I thought I could write a book on chemtrails. So that's how it came about. It wasn't necessarily through my friendship with Clifford or anything. It was that Adam wanted to give me a break, I think, to publish a book by me. So I wrote that book with the help of Clifford, looking over my shoulder as I explained the sort of like the patents of Bernard Eastland, who was very much the man that gave the keys to the kingdom to those who knew they needed to control the atmosphere. They knew that. And so I wrote about that in the book. I wrote about Clifford's work on Morgellons. We had all done the red wine test to see these filaments, these fibers that were falling from these jets. Mm-hmm. And Clifford was able to eventually break into the polymer fibers and find the organs of something that had been bioengineered. So, it all was starting then, and I had no idea how big it was at that point. But by writing that one book, I suddenly realized through a conversation with someone who heard me on that all-night radio show that hundreds of thousands, millions of people listen to, coast to coast. I got in contact with a guy who'd been working for the military industrial intelligence complex pretty much all his life, Billy Hayes. And Billy Hayes is known as the HARP man because he was on the team that built the phased array antennas up in Gakona, Alaska, to make the ionospheric heater that has become famous for its acronym, if nothing else, the High Frequency Active Aurora Research Project. So Billy pretty much hand led me through what I had written before and pointed out what direction it was going in. And it was obviously going in the direction of building a space fence grid above and on the planet, in which the plan was to plug us all in, not just our brains either, but our genetics. And so I then began the Under an Ionized Sky, from chemtrails to space fence lockdown, looking at Catherine Austin Fitts' idea of the secret space program and how it accounted possibly for the disappearance of $21 trillion from the American budget. And it was in looking at it through a canopy of secret space program and understanding that there was a Russian whose name, let me just grab it, a Russian astronomer named Nikolai Kardashev. And Kardashev had come up with the idea that if a civilization wanted to be really great and really have a space age and have dominance in space as well as on the Earth, it would have to do three things. And the first thing was full spectrum dominance over planet Earth. And that would include not just military stuff, not just NASA and NOAA and that sort of thing. No, full spectrum dominance over everyone and everything and all of life. And then the next thing it would need to do is to do the same with its sun, with solar. And definitely, I can definitely say that they are now working very hard on controlling the sun. And right now it's solar minimum, perfect time for them to work. But that, when they blame climate change and all the rest on the solar minimum, or they say it's going to get too hot or it's going to get too cold or whatever they say, it's all cover stories. It's all nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
It's not at all about what they're doing. And the third step sounds almost like a fairy tale I used to tell when I was a Waldorf teacher, in that they want to control the galaxy. It's sort of like hubris times, 1,000.
Right.
So that's the I think that's the overarching canopy of what's going on, and has been going on for decades. Not just to be king of the world, but to actually be king of the universe. And that sort of hubris really explains the no holds barred and all of the laws. If you start to examine the patents, you're looking at a lot of the laws that have been made. You see that there is a constant opening of the doors, less law, allowing many things to go on, such as to the very degree now where the genetics are turning from molecular to digital. And many people have been invited at home because they can order virus, they can order bacteria from some sort of place where you can get them for a few dollars and get them home and get them into your lab and just go to town. And meanwhile, these people are kept track of. Of course, their sales are kept track of, and they're watched to see what they come up with. So the idea of Macro to micro, yes. It's all the way from space, where we have a lot of satellites up now, as you know. We have a lot of nanosensors. That's very, very important. A lot of nanoparticles being spewed by the jets, by the rockets, by the drones, all up in the stratosphere. And a lot of those will get caught in centrifugal force as the Earth is turning, but a lot of them fall to the Earth. And so my concern when I was writing the second book and had finished it was that, wow, we're breathing in all the nanoscale implements that the space fence is using in order to have full spectrum dominance over planet Earth. So we're not just breathing in like little dust mites or something. No, we're breathing in actual mechano electro MEMS, they're called MEMS. And these are sensors, but they have tiny computers in them so that they're broadcasting and they're receiving, and they can be programmed to do different things. So we have those in our body. And so my next question, of course, was, wow, we have it in our bodies. Do you suppose that was intentional? Do you suppose this is not just something that is sort of a sidebar to the secret space program, but that actually now the implements are in us for full control over human beings, and that's why I started writing this last book.
Mm-hmm.
And it is my last. I swear, I will not write another geoengineering book. I think I have said I've taken it all the way home to the gene, and of course mind control, as you mentioned. It's amazing that you could have a sort of class of people on the planet who, first of all, their predecessors would have gone back to the Nazis in Operation Paperclip. They would have worked on MK Ultra. They would have worked on all the different classified programs that, of course, the 1947 National Security Act covered for, because you could never discuss any of those in Congress, in a Senate hearing or a committee meeting, nothing. So everything was taken into private sessions, and so you had the Cold War, which was completely a sham, I have to say. Never really happened, but it did happen in another way. Similar to global warming and climate change now. It was the cover story for the fact that we were supporting all that Russia was doing, all that the Soviet Union was doing. They couldn't have done it without our money, without the money of the West. And meanwhile, sort of like Cain and Abel, we were sort of vying with each other, sparring with each other, while a huge weapons arsenal shifted from missiles to directed energy weapons. And so all of this was to have this full spectrum dominance. And meanwhile, in genetics, the Human Genome Project, the Brain Initiative, all of these things, big, big money pouring into these, not to make people better or to help them with their Alzheimer's from all of the now the endless wireless technology that's everywhere and completely antithetical to our nervous system lasting. And so when you look at the big picture like I do, and my way of working is probably quite unorthodox, I would imagine. I certainly never I got a master's in historiography, but to find out how to write histories, but I never got a PhD. I could have gotten a PhD. I had people who wanted to support me for a PhD. No, I didn't want the conditioning. I didn't want the programming that goes on in the PhD programs. And I just sort of read and read and read in order to better understand. I had studied biology. I really loved it in college, but I didn't know that much about physics. Really, that was my father's field. My father's field was physics and chemistry. But I don't know. Just something opened up in me that, for the sake of the biology of life, I was willing to learn anything. Well, this side of higher mathematics, forget that.
Hmm.
But I would read something, decide that it had something to do with what I was interested in, and I'd print it off. And that's kind of how I developed, a couple, three, I don't know how many thousands of pages of notes I had in my files. But to write the book, when I felt ready, it was more just a going through from what I knew well to what I knew less, and doing the amount of reading I needed to do in order to really have a handle on what I knew less. And slowly, as you build each subject, like in the first 7 chapters of the book, I'm looking at geoengineering again. I take another look at it after 4 years. There are things that have changed. I've changed. I'm looking at different things in it. So to go from what I know to then going to the second part of the book, where I'm actually examining the smart city, which I already had a lot of notes on, looking at how the MEMS, the GEMS, and the NEMS, which are all nanosensors, how they're playing a role in the smart city, how the lighting of the smart cities is being used as a dual use. And dual use is extremely important because just about every technology we love, I've never owned an iPhone and I've never owned a television. All of these technologies came from the military. I have to remind people they did not come from corporations initially, and they all have a dual use. They're for military use as a weapon, and they're also for civilian convenience, comfort, entertainment, etc. So it's kind of a really brilliant system whereby you can have weapons in plain sight, but nobody really knows how they operate. We certainly don't cover them in the schools. We're not interested in having kids know how they work. You have a few science geeks there, fine, but you lead them on this very droll curriculum that really is sort of already historical in a sense and not really up to date on what's going on now. And then you pluck out the bright kids from various you might have a contest, or you've already watched this kid for years since they were in grade school, and then you pull them out for special programs for that Microsoft is running, or Google's having a wonderful conference for bright kids, bright science minded. And then those kids are pretty much toast because they're going to be used. And in order to use them, it's not impossible that they're going to be subjected to the latest version of MK Ultra. So, being bright now is almost, you want to throw a bushel over it so that the bad boys don't notice this poor kid, so that this kid can have a life of his own. All of it has been all the way from the CIA that I studied years ago, and in my own generation saw the CIA taking over the FBI. I certainly knew that when I was 22 years old. I knew it was a done deal. That COINTELPRO was really a CIA program that they were training FBI agents in. So that the CIA was always domestic, that was no news to me. But now people are slowly waking. Wow, this is, all of this has been here all along. It's been the challenge to wake people up before it's too late. And I have to say that even though the fat lady hasn't sung yet, and I always say that, this ain't over till it's over. There's a fight going on now. There's a war. And for the sake of humanity's future, I might add, and for the sake of life on Earth, its future. But the idea that they could have come so far, and then they did take me by surprise by doing the thing that happened in 2019. I remember, I'll never forget watching on the internet that scene in Wuhan when people are just dropping on the sidewalk, on the street. And whether those were actors or not, it doesn't really matter to me, because what was being announced was the advent of 5G, 6G. and the oxygen that's just sucked right out of you, just gone, and you're dead. So to me, when they turned it to the virus, and they had this whole story about the virus, and and then there was this about the uh, alliance between Harvard and Lieberman and Wuhan, and the storyline, and I was interested in the storyline, and that's one reason the book is several months later than I thought it would be, because I had to really listen every day to breaking news in the storyline of what was going on. And I mean, it didn't take me by surprise anymore after that initial scene when I realized what was going on regarding this so called CV-19. But I think I now was able to finish the book. Oh, and by the way, here it is.
Great.
690 pages, Doug. I'm embarrassed. I'm absolutely embarrassed. But to tell such a big story, you need a lot of pages.
Sure.
And there are 60 illustrations. So I was ready to completely grasp how the three phases of delivery that have happened over the last 30 years, about 30 years, all the way from the chemical trails in the sky delivery system to the GMO fields that Monsanto, of course, produced its aluminum resistant seed because it was already in collusion with the geoengineers dropping aluminum big time on us, aluminum oxide, all nano scale. And then that's the second delivery system. And I have to put in a little note here. I'm constantly amazed that people actually eat GMO foods. I mean, when you go to a restaurant, it makes sense that you're going to eat GMOs because they're trying to cut costs, but that you would actually go out and buy GMO foods and actually eat them makes no sense to me, because don't you get what genetically modified means? Don't you get that 26 nations across the earth refuse to allow any GMOs in their borders? It's a federal offense, and no one is allowed to grow any of that. It's genetically modified. What does that do to your cells? I mean, come on, just put it together.
Yeah.
So I've eaten organic since I was 21 years old. And when I go out to eat with friends, I don't sit there and pick at things and criticize. No, I eat the meal. Then I come home and I eat like a saint for a couple of days so that I can get back on track. All right, that's the second delivery system. The third delivery system is, of course, the famous vaccine. And of course, they've been using that as a piggyback mechanism to get other things into babies for many years. I did not allow vaccinating of my children, and I certainly have not suffered under any vaccine since I was. I think last time I was 6 years old, and so those three delivery systems. All right, now you can see that they've taken the third one a step further, and now what they're inoculating people with and calling it a vaccine, but it's not a vaccine. It's an inoculation. It's a gene therapy, and it is in putting into people much more than, and certainly nothing to do with COVID-19. That's a ruse. That's an illusion. It doesn't even exist. So they're implanting software into people's bodies, and with a lot of other equipment, such as the graphene oxide, the hydrogel. Now we find about these fauna that are in there, these parasites, and the hydra with the three legs, and all this stuff that they're putting into these people for their dual use agendas of transforming the human gene, the genome, into some sort of hybrid, and really reclassifying a vast number of human beings as transhumans. And you can find the patents that cover this, because they don't make a move in genetics or molecular biology or digital biology without first checking out how they can own it as a weapon system. And that has to do with of course, the ability to change it so it's not natural, gain of function, they call it, gain of function. And then from there, then you have the patent. And in the patent for the transhuman, and there are several patents for transhumans already, there will be more. They make it clear that the transhuman will not qualify for human rights. So this is the deal. This is how they're proceeding, and it is understandable, isn't it, to people? Even though I'm sure a lot of people listening have relatives who've already had the jab, who felt they were doing humanity a noble deed because they wanted people to be safe, and all the things they've been told by the almighty television. You do understand that this picture is so big, and it's so bold what's happened, so bold. You have to give them that, the global elite, that it's understandable. People won't understand what's going on. They can't imagine operating on a scale such as I describe in this latest book. The scale itself it's absolutely unbelievable. And of course, the idea of these people is that, it doesn't matter how you do something, it's just that you get it done. And so it's ruthless. It's absolutely ruthless with scientists, with political figures. It's using every trick in the book. And of course, having taken over the mainstream media, back in 1973 is when the CIA took it over. And I've got that documented. 73, we have not had a real media since then. So when you control all the media, what's to worry about? Because most people are now conditioned, and they are unaware of the technology in the new televisions, which is not only listening to everything they say, whether the TV is on or not, but it's also filming everyone. And it's also putting out its own subliminals that are operating straight to the brain. Straight to the brain. They don't need the old subliminals of disguising Coca-Cola. You want to have a Coca-Cola behind some picture. No, that technology is old school. No, they can now do it another way, and pulsing people through their iPhones, pulsing by triangulating with cell towers, satellite pulsing, however you want to look at it, as long as they keep particulate matter in the air. And that's where the chemical trails still come in. They're still necessary. They have not, even though some people say to me, yeah, but Elana, I haven't seen any trails for a long time. No, that's because it's patented and already a done deal that they can put up little chem bombs here and there and pop them, and then they become the cloud cover, the cirrus cloud cover that they need for a variety of reasons. And the cirrus clouds we have now are not the ones of yesteryear. These are plasma clouds. They're created with electromagnetism and chemicals. So we have, the air is constantly particulated because we need that for wireless operations, and we are constantly breathing it in. So what we need for a remedy for this, just that part of it, right? No, we're not going to deal with the big questions of the vaccine and all that. What we need is something that is a maintenance system by which you can alleviate
Mm-hmm.
uh, a great number of these nanoparticles that you are, because tomorrow you're going to be breathing in another trillion of them. Uh, that can't be helped. But there are ways, and I always mention the herbalist, the Canadian herbalist Tony Pantalaresco. He's one of many now, but Tony has really spent a lot of time over the last decade and more uh, experimenting with ways to get the nanotechnology out of our bodies, and that is very important. And that would include the graphene oxide, because the graphene oxide are nanotechnology as well. So the nanotechnology, in my estimation, is the next turn of the keys to the kingdom. Uh, and the guy who invented nanotech, Eric Drexler, uh, we're going back to the 70s here when he was in grad school. He realized and sort of sat on his invention, didn't even talk to his friends about it. He realized that it could be very dangerous to loose what he had in mind, these tiny, 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 one nanometer is the size of a 1 billionth of a meter. And that a nanometer, a nano made out of elements from the periodic table, is down to the atomic level. So you make a nano by laying 5 atoms next to each other, or 100 atoms, or 1,000 atoms. That's how you do it. This coming that close to the atomic level on a scale of materiality, that this is actually physical. Um, Wow, I think it's opened some portals, as we call them, or doors to quantum parallel dimensions. And what's coming through there, as when I wrote the chapter in the last book about CERN, I'm not sure what's coming in. And
Right.
this is where we cross over from the very physical to something else. And that may be my greatest concern about the nanotechnology in us, and the nanotech that is in the inoculations going on now, is that these nanos, they live in this realm, yes, but they kind of live in another realm, because they have a consciousness, not a single consciousness, not one nano thinking or anything like that. No, the nanos, the nanobots, the nanorobots, the ones that have been uh, manhandled, you might say, uh, they consolidate into tribal structures, you might want to call them, where they actually swarm together, and they think together, and they receive their instructions from remote laptop boys who are running programs from wherever they are. That there is a consciousness there. So that's why we have patents now named in some part of the naming, the inorganic life. These are called
Hmm.
inorganic life, because they do have a consciousness. And that may sound very creepy, but of course, even parasites have a consciousness. Even the flora and fauna in your intestinal tract that makes your intestines work well have a consciousness. But this is a little different. So let's just imagine I have them in me. And I know I have them in me, by the way. When Clifford Carnicom was doing all of his testing, I guess the shocking part to me was that, yeah, we're all breathing the air. So, across the earth, not just in the United States or in NATO countries. So we all have this Morgellons fiber in us. We all have it in us. But whether or not it's activated is another story. And whether or not it is promulgating on a large scale because your body is acidic is another story. Because I think if I were to recommend to people anything, it would be to watch your acidic your acid alkaline balance,
Mm-hmm.
because the nanotech does very well with acidity, but not very well with alkalinity. It becomes quiescent anyway. It's not that it kills it. Nothing kills it. Just so you know, nothing kills it. It just transmutes or it goes dormant.
Hmm.
So okay. So where was I? I was off on another trail, and now I've forgotten it. Um,
We were talking about the consciousness, and the way that these
yes,
nanobots can work together.
got it. So imagine that the consciousness, the swarm consciousness of these little entities that are at the atomic level of sorts, imagine that your consciousness is now going to connect with their consciousness. Imagine that you could take your consciousness and actually dominate them, despite the fact that they are being remotely controlled on some level by supercomputers, AI systems somewhere, whatever. Imagine that your consciousness could override that. This is where I am now. This is, I mean, yes, I'm very grateful for like Tony Pantalaresco's baths, and he has a thing called the Triangle. You can go to his sites and you can find out how to build them. The nano bucket or the ionizing foot bath. All of these things are good for maintenance. Yes, very good.
Mm-hmm.
But imagine that you could actually dominate them with your human consciousness, because the human consciousness is much greater if you use it. Now, a lot of people just choose to be couch potatoes and sort of wait for the next thing to happen and then react to it. That's not the kind of consciousness I'm talking about. And so I've begun experiments with that. Getting to know
Right.
you with my little nano colony, which is probably not very little in me now. And I have to admit, I see some I see some evidence of this, that I'm having some success. I wish I could prove it to you. I wish I could, like, take out my little project and you could look at it. But you have to take my word that I've been working on this for a few months.
Let's let's actually kind of analyze some of the scientific aspects. So when we start talking about consciousness, I think this is what your work is really touching on, is that consciousness is actually a scientifically quantifiable thing that works in a certain way with these within these frequency bands. And technologists within the government, within these classified programs, have been actually studying this now for decades, and they've figured out how to influence consciousness with nanotechnology and with electromagnetic frequency. And so, just because I mean, we could talk about why more people don't know about this. I oftentimes bring up on this show that in other cultures, in traditional Chinese culture or in Hinduism or any native, indigenous philosophies, they all understood that this is how consciousness worked, and that it worked on this frequency level. But most people now being raised in this culture are not raised with that knowledge, so it's just totally foreign to them. That human beings actually do work on an electromagnetic frequency level, that our thoughts are determined by this, that our organs utilize these frequencies, that our brains use. I mean, I think people, they know that the heart has an EKG or that there's such a thing as brain waves, but they don't get that these waves interact with our environment, in the natural environment, in a good and healthy way, as we've evolved within nature. And now the technologists have learned how to essentially co-opt that natural system and are being able to influence us externally by hijacking that system within us. It's all because when you start talking about consciousness, it sounds woo-woo, but it's actually all science-based. I mean, it's all, they've just figured out the
Oh yeah.
system and how it works. So it's not
Well,
really as esoteric as people, may think.
and I think that you brought up a really good point, because I think that conditioning that people have undergone it's kind of like you bring up the idea of eating organic food. Right away, people think of hippies and
Right.
the new age and, and back to nature. And it's the same thing with the word consciousness. Your conditioning is that has to do with maybe Zen Buddhism, or it has to do with meditation, or it's something kind of woo woo. And that's the conditioning, and in order to understand exactly what you're saying and what I'm saying, the first step is going to have to be looking at your conditioning.
Right.
You've
And
got to look at your conditioning.
and there's so much evidence that we're conditioned like this on
Hmm.
purpose. Like they,
Hmm.
I view it as the colonized consciousness that we're indoctrinated into this empire, and the leaders of the empire clearly don't want us to know how to use our consciousness, because if we did, then we'd be individuated and we wouldn't be listening to them anymore. We'd be thinking for ourselves, right? So they don't teach us
Exactly.
how to do that. Clearly, they teach us how to
Exactly.
follow orders.
And I think there are some technologies that people should get rid of, actually.
Yeah.
And of course, the TV is number one. Get rid of the TV. Don't even give it to someone. You're not doing them a favor, believe me.
Right.
Get rid of it. I once had a TV smashing party years ago when I was a Waldorf teacher. But we smashed about 3 or 4. It was very satisfying. A
It's
lot of cleanup, but
Right. It's been amazing to me, to see, especially in the last year and a half here, just how much the media and the television, I mean, people listen to it and that's just
mhm,
what they believe. And it doesn't,
mhm,
it doesn't
they
matter
do.
the information that you give them that's not being handed to them by
Nope.
the television. They're not going to listen to it because they've been programmed. And
Well, and
it's
they've been programmed to think that we're the ones with the false information.
right, right,
That's really quite brilliant and quite satanic. Satanists are very good at inverting things.
right.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so yes, the consciousness is. I think the first step is to get rid of those things that are undoing your consciousness, and that would include the iPhone. And
Hmm.
that would be a big deal because everybody tells me how they just could not do without their iPhone. I've never even owned one, I don't have that withdrawal symptom. I have a landline. It's here to collect messages. It's here already. The 60 hertz in the walls, and I try to live in old places so that I don't have the Internet of Things thing to worry about. So the examination of the technology around us that we think is entirely about our convenience and our comfort, and making life easier, quote unquote, is really not what you think it is. And in order to change our consciousness, we're going to have to change our habits. And that's tough because,
Hmm.
you get some habits, and, like my cup of coffee, strong coffee in the morning. Oh, well, I can do it. I can
Yep.
do it. But I always feel like I'm missing something, right? And
Tell me
my
about
brain
it.
cells are going, not being as vibrant as usual, right? So, yes, it is hard. I'm asking a hard thing from people. But I think that if you exchange these baubles and beads for real consciousness, I think you're going to be surprised at what a human being really is. A
Yeah.
lot of people have a very skewed idea of that a human being is like a meat bag, I think was one term used a long time ago. And then now I read patents for various technologies, and it's very common that you read there's hardware, there's software, and there's wetware.
Hmm.
And the wetware is us. And that's used to be that the CIA had that term, and I assume wetware comes from them because they had a term called wet operations, and that was a nice term, I guess. It sounded kind of icky to me for assassination. So we are the wetware, but and then there's a chapter in the book. I get into esoterics in this book, Doug, more than I have in the other books. I
Hmm.
think the most esoteric I did in the last book was in the chapter I covered on plasma and ether, and scalar energy. I think I got a bit esoteric there. But now I'm going full out in one chapter, lots of esoterics about the human brain and what thought really is, what human thought really is. It's far different than you've been told. You've been told your brain thinks. That's nonsense. It's kind of like saying that when a diver dives off the diving board, that the diving board is totally responsible for the dive. Not really, not really. It simply makes it, maybe you can do a few more tricks with it, but you can definitely see that the diver is in charge. And that's the way it is for our consciousness. But if what I'm thinking is true about the nanotechnology, and we're not just talking about the nanotechnology in my body, we're talking about the fact that nanotechnology is everywhere. It's in cosmetics, it's in foods. All the refined foods have used nanobots, nanoparticles for filler, nano this, nano that. Sensors are everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we were able to have a conscious relationship with the nano world, the nano species, you might call it, the inorganic life nano species, uh, that might be the key, because now the genie is out of the bottle and is actually being jammed into people's bodies in inoculations. And all of those nano particles and nanobots inside the body immediately self-replicate. They are known for being extremely rapid in their self-replication. That's why I say, if you don't want them replicating really fast in your body, watch your acid alkaline balance. Very, very important. Clifford Carnicom discovered that by having the fibers in the petri dishes. So yes, you're right. The consciousness needs to be explored. You have a different consciousness when you go around people. You have from when you're alone. You have a different consciousness when you're talking to a child, or even your dog, or your horse. And so start really looking at what consciousness is, because it is not simply, I need to pick up a quart of milk on my way home kind of thing. That is not consciousness. You have to be conscious to do it, in the sense that you're not asleep, you're not supine on the bed.
Mm-hmm.
But think of how many people you're seeing now. I don't know about you, Doug, but I can speak for myself, who have been jabbed, have undergone at least 2 jabs, and their consciousness changes. So this is very real. This assault on humanity is very real, and we need all hands on deck. I'm not asking you to examine your consciousness as a lark, as a Zen Buddhist meditation technique. No, I'm saying that if we have any way out of this dilemma, it's going to be through consciousness. And
Mm-hmm.
so you have to be really surveillant of your lifestyle, make some hard decisions about what you're doing and not doing in your lifestyle, and take this technology, this dual use technology, very seriously, and not wait for the experts, or the kind benign experts that you think you're going to, like somebody like Robert F. Kennedy coming along, Jr. coming along and fixing things. No, it's not going to happen that way. And this is not going to end quickly either. So we really need to get on the ball here. And that's one of the things. And then you go to those sites where Tony Pantalaresco and others are experimenting with vitamin C and ivermectin, and all of these different things. This is our weaning ourselves from the great smart hospital, where
Mm-hmm.
it is extremely dangerous go into those hospitals now. Not only are people on staff already sold lock, stock, and barrel to the other side, as I call it, but the 5G, 6G system is up and running in a lot of these hospitals, and that will not help your health. So
Right.
we really need to take command over our self-responsibility for our health and our mental health again by examining our technology and setting ourselves different regimes.
I think the way that I can view it maybe is that the consciousness, from my Tai Chi practice, right? I've learned that it's almost like a muscle, like your free will is like a muscle and you have to exercise it.
Yes.
Or else you'll just be, and this is true really in the best of circumstances, you'll just be kind of working off subconscious programming without, without being able to use your free will to, to make more conscious decisions. And so all of this nanotechnology, even and the macro and the geoengineering on the macro and the micro scale is really kind of designed to interfere with that free will capacity that we have so that we become more easily controllable, right? That kind of makes sense. So we've got to exercise that free will muscle that we have, and that can be enough.
And it has to do with our immune system, believe it or not. I mean, one of the things that we've learned from this mRNA approach is that, not only is it skirting its way around the immune system, but it's actually destroying the immune system. I mean, the white blood cells are not showing up. The antibody problem. I mean, if you just get over, I don't have a PhD in science and I'm not a doctor. You get over that and start paying attention to the details and understand that, yes, this is all. And I actually pointed out in the book over and over again that the immune system was completely under attack for decades.
Right.
What do you think all that junk food is for? Do you think it's just for profit? It's not just for profit. It's for destroying the immune system, depleting it. Because, and I read this in a Rudolf Steiner person's essay that I really liked. Some of it I didn't think was so great, but this really got me, is what if your higher self, the one that does the right thing, the one that runs your conscience, what if your higher self is connected to your immune system? What if that's true? That here's the immune system. We keep hearing about it. I mean, Tom Cowan, Dr. Tom Cowan, even said there is no such thing as an immune system. He's right, of course. There is not this thing in there that's the immune system, like an organ. No, but there is a balance, and I already gave you a clue to part of the balance is the acid alkaline thing for the immune system. What if the higher self is connected to the immune system? Then by serving the higher self, you serve the immune system. By serving the immune system, you serve the higher self. Do you see where I'm going with this? I mean, it's instead of this incredible split in the West between spirit and matter,
right,
between science and spirituality or religion or whatever, then what if they really aren't split, but they have been split by our warlike culture that has wanted to have total control? Now we bring them back together by seeing the corollary, like a lemniscate, between the higher self and the immune system. And, I have a great immune system. I'm so, it's not that I think it came from heaven. No, I've eaten carefully and drunk certain water and all these years, because I didn't want to be a broken down old lady that somebody had to take care of. So far, so good. And so, there is a reason for the reason they're after the immune system. You see, I mean, they're after it for more than just the physical body, is what I'm saying.
You are listening to this. You are listening to the first free hour of The Shift with Doug McKenty. For access to the full feature-length versions of the podcast, go to www.theshiftnow.com and subscribe for the audio version for just $6 a month. Access the full-length episodes in video form through rockfin.com by subscribing at the Shift with Doug McKenty landing page. For $9.99 a month, you gain access not only to The Shift, but also all other premium content material hosted on the platform. Find out more at www.theshiftnow.com/store. Detoxify your body, decolonize your mind, make the shift. Isn't it fascinating that they're talking about this virtual twinning now, that we're going to have these virtual personalities inside? It's almost like they're taking, reality. I mean, I question if this isn't, if our real life isn't almost a simulation, and I've got a body somewhere else, but I'm perceiving and living inside this. I don't know if we can even answer that question.
I think in some people it's already happened, but
Sure.
No, it's going on with some people. It is, and I'm sorry to say, I think a lot of them are younger.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they were raised with TV and iPhones, and babysitters and daycares, and everybody was too busy to be human. And I think it's already happening. I think we have to get good at deciding what is human, and then start really observing people to see if they are still human.
Zuckerberg is calling his company Meta now, and that's the metaverse. And now I'm getting on Facebook today thinking, like, am I already sucked into this thing? Clearly Facebook is just, these social media sites are just the beginning of this metaverse where your digital twin is going to live ad infinitum inside of a virtual reality. And they're barely even hiding it. And they're not just hiding it, they're bringing it out. They've been working on this, as you well know, for decades, but now they're starting to bring it out into the public so we can, they're herding people in this direction, so they'll all join into the metaverse.
We're all plugged into one degree or another now. Yeah. We all are. Even those of us who are aware of the process going on, we have to be aware now in a different way. And that might be the blessing. The Chinese have a saying, the bigger the front, the bigger the back. Well, we're experiencing the back now. And now we need to look for the front of this, that there is something we can gain from this regarding our consciousness. But remember, the virtual self, their intent is that we will all be living in the internet, and that the virtual self will be telling the human what to do.
Right.
And we will do it. Yeah. That's their goal.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And it is a spiritual battle. Like we were discussing before, people need to learn how to flex their consciousness muscle, their own etheric muscle, and cultivate their individuality to keep these things at bay. Fortunately, right now, I think you're right. I think all of us are immersed in, to some degree or another, some less than others. If you're choosing to live in a EMF-free or minimized environment, if you're eating organic, or if you're eating alkaline, like you're talking about. But I don't think any of us have escaped it completely. And it's also right now, I think, would you agree with this? It's there. Well, this is something I was thinking about for a couple of reasons. So why don't we discuss this for a second? How they're they add this in layers. Clearly they started with whatever 1G, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we're all getting acclimated to it. But then even with the nanotechnology, like they start spraying it in the skies. Now they're injecting it into people. Then there's booster shots. And then, so over time, people are getting more and more of it. I think if they try to turn us all into cyborgs right away, there would just be a mass death situation going on. It's toxic for people to ingest this technology. And so I think by stepping it up slowly, gradually, we're all getting it into us. They're able to, maybe take out a few people here and there, and then maybe people are getting more and more acclimated to it. You know what I mean? So that it's not happening all at once.
Yeah, and at the same time, they're still experimenting. It's all experimental.
Sure.
Of what they're going to do with us once we're theirs. Because they have a lot of different things. There'll be the space travelers. There'll be the factory worker slaves. There'll be the, they want the arts. They want a lot of things that their own bloodlines, as they well know now, are basically depleted. They're not what they used to be, and they know that. So to what degree they'll be able to do this. But I wanted to say something before we sign off. I assume that's coming soon.
Sure.
And it has to do with this. For those people who think they can wait for Jesus Christ to save them, or Buddha to save them, or if they pray enough, if they meditate enough, however you want to look at it, the problem with that is we are free will beings. And my knowledge of, and I've had considerable spiritual experiences, given that my grandmother was a Roma gypsy, and maybe I inherited some of her
I'd say so.
qualities. I would say that we must stand firm. We must stand firm in our free will, because they will not reach to help us. None of them will, unless we ourselves stand and really reach into our strength and our free will to make a stand for humanity. Then the spiritual world will move for us.
Right.
I know that's how it works. It's not mommy and daddy up in the sky who are going to take care of us. We have to. We've been evolving a long time. Our masters on the earth now want to take that evolution away from us, so that we only evolve according to their specs. We now must stand, and then the spiritual world will match whatever we put forth. That's how.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, is that people really just have to really want to express their own free will, and whatever modality you use, then go for it and use it. If it's Buddhism, if it's finding Christ consciousness, and it's just so interesting that, because there are so many corruptive influences out there. Everyone has to use their own discernment. I think you're exactly right that people were so trained. I mean, that idea of trust the experts that they've been pushing on us for the last 2 years to get us to stop, to not think for ourselves, to not think critically. I've done so many interviews about this topic. It's almost like everything is coming together about this topic. Like whatever topic I'm discussing, it's always comes back to, are you thinking for yourself, or are you letting somebody else do the thinking for you? And this whole spiritual battle, if you will, is exactly that. And yet everybody's got to watch out for this inversion. I mean, we talked about even certain meditative styles. If your guru is corrupted, then you're going to be participating in this inversion. If you're giving a guru too much of yourself and you're not using your own individual discernment, then you're going to be in trouble. And the same is true if you're going to a church. Depends on who the preacher is or who the priest is, But I think you're exactly right that we've got to flex our free will muscles here, or else we're going to be in trouble.
Well, and Rudolf Steiner said that this era on, there is only one path of initiation, and that path of initiation is everyday life. This is it.
Yeah.
There's no school to go to. There's no higher authorities who are enlightened and will ease our burden and show us the way. No, it's life itself. For me, I always say every day is Sunday and everywhere is church.
There you go. I think that's actually one of the hardest lessons for me personally to learn, is to be satisfied with the everyday experience, like you're talking about, instead of trying to find it somewhere else. It's actually already here.
Well, you're just not penetrating it deeply enough.
I'll keep working on it. All right. Well, Elana, thank you so much for coming on. This is just an incredible conversation. I love talking with you. You just have such a great depth of knowledge. You've been doing this for so long. I can't even imagine I was preparing for this interview. I was listening to some of your other interviews and just realizing that, like, my God, you've been researching this stuff for decades and decades. And I just know what it's like now. I probably only in the last couple of years have I gotten to that place where I can, I can have a question. I look at the peer-reviewed science, I look at the patents, like you're talking about, and I go, "Oh my God, they've been working on this stuff for 10 years." And I can't imagine what it would have been like to have this knowledge for as long as you have, to always, to know what they've been working on, to be trying to tell other people this is what's coming, and it's what's coming. It's what they're spending billions of dollars on. It's what they've got patented. It's got what they're doing peer-reviewed research on, and nobody's listening to you.
Nobody's listening. Yeah. Yeah, I write these books for people 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road who are going to wonder what the heck
Right.
went on back then.
I know. Well, I tell you what, you've seriously influenced me, and I know there are a lot of other people that are around right now that are gaining from what you're doing. So thanks for the work that you've done, and you are getting the word out. It is happening. I'm sure it's better now than it was 10 years ago, and better then than it was 20 years ago. So
yes,
people are starting to figure it out. What do you think? What do you think that is going to look like in the next 10 years? We can kind of finish up on this one. Like, do you think that, do you want to speculate? Do you think that there's like a mass awakening about to happen? Or do you think that we're going to have to, those of us who kind of have it figured out are going to have to band together and figure out how to make it work outside the system? Or, how do you see this playing out?
Well, when I wrote a series I hardly ever talk about, which is the Sub Rosa America series, I had a scenario very much like what's going on right now, unbelievably.
Yeah.
I go back to that year in 1993. I had a dream of the numbers 2019 being like 4 stories high and on fire. And I was just like, oh, and I woke up it was so lucid, the red numbers just burning. And so I chose the year 2019 to start the book from looking at a retrospect, looking backward from an older character who's hiking into the Rockies off of the Oregon Trail, and all of America is collapsing, and she's going to meet all her friends just a group of friends she had back in the 60s. They all said that if it came to that it would all go down, they would all meet at this one place. They all knew where it was. So the whole book is her flashing back to 1970, when a group of 7 friends who don't know each other that well all get in a VW bus and an old Cadillac and head on Route 66 heading for Dallas in order to see where John Kennedy was shot down. And what happens to them on that trip is just loaded with history of America since Kennedy's assassination. The Sub Rosa history, the underbelly that you won't find in most history books. But I've always said that my Sub Rosa series should be next to Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States of America, because even though I have it in a fictional format so that I could justify the 60s generation as not being like what Time magazine and Newsweek said it was, of sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Right.
It was actually also political and spiritual quest. I mean, with long discussions into the night, long discussions on history, because we had a good education back then. We actually knew some things about history.
Right.
Now kids don't have any idea. So that's kind of my thought in writing those books, because of how they end. And I didn't know the ending until I got to it, to tell you the truth, was we might have to start over. Yeah. And I'm still there. I'm still there. There is no going back. And who will be left, who will truly be human? I don't know that yet. But I know that there will be a humanity, and that the fat lady has not sung yet. I know that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I actually think, I don't know, I might even be looking forward a little bit to if there is a dichotomy that's happening, if there's going to be those that are under control of the system and those who aren't. And for those of us who aren't, I think we can make a really great life for ourselves, and it's going to be new and different, and we're going to have, struggles and figuring out how to get food and make clothes and whatever else that we need to do. But I just think that we're going to get through and figure out a new way that's going to be very much better than even, I mean, because we've all been living under this control system, just because they're amping it up.
My whole life under it. My whole life. Yes. And I think you're a definite candidate for the Sub Rosa America series.
Nice.
Because there's a lot of survival stuff in it. Anyway.
I should check it out. I mean, I've been toying with it. I've known about it since for a few years now, since our last interview. But
well, when I met Allison McDowell in Tucson, she was on book number 3.
Oh, really? Interesting. Good to know. Yeah. All right. Well, maybe we'll do an interview about Sub Rosa, and we'll come back full circle. Well, do you want to let people know? I actually was just looking. I didn't because the new book is just coming out. I didn't get a chance to read it for this interview.
It is out.
I saw it was out on Amazon.
Sporadically, because it's making its way.
Okay.
Yeah. Here's how it works. It's 690 pages, 60 illustrations. To make it, I didn't want to make it cost prohibitive for the masses of people who might want to read it. So there's a version that is black and white. Had I gone color, it would have been $75 to buy it. Okay. This way, I think it's about 40 or 45, and for the black and white. Then if you want a special color edition, a very nice book owner in Seattle at the Rudolph Steiner bookstore has volunteered to carry a colored version of the color illustrations that you can buy for maybe $15 more than the other one. And that one is, you just go to the Rudolph Steiner bookstore and get in touch with him, and he knows exactly what that is. For the others, it's the usual Amazon and your bookseller, your bookstore, to have them order it, to go to the library and have them order it. It's the usual kind of thing. I was with Feral House for the first 2 books, and I finally left them just so I could make a little bit more on each book, and I mean little. They were very good to me, and I have nothing but praise for their products that they did. But I've decided to go on my own because my fan base was large enough that I could do that.
And the website I can point people to?
ElanaFreeland.com. And that's great because my webmistress keeps it up, and it's just chock full of MK Ultra, geoengineering, targeting. I have a lot to say about a lot of things.
Sounds good. I'll definitely point people in that direction then. And I'll just let the audience know that you've been listening to The Shift. I'm your host, Doug McKenty, and you can check out all of my stuff at www.theshiftnow.com. I've got radio programs going back for 10 years now. Then I started out on public radio here in Northern California, and I've got like 40 or so of those. So there's actually hundreds of interviews up on the website now, so you can check all of that out. And please think about subscribing to the newsletter, because that's how I keep in touch. I'm also on Facebook under my name, Doug McKenty. There is a Shift Facebook page, but it doesn't get any traction for some reason. So my personal page is where most of the action's at. Even though I'm thinking about just dropping the social media thing entirely after they call themselves Metaverse. But and you can get me on Twitter at @DMcKenty. So thanks everybody for listening. This was a great conversation. Thanks, Elana, for the work that you do. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, take care. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was my conversation with Elana Freeland. Really happy to speak with her again. I think she was somewhere around episode 30. So it's been a few years actually since the last time I talked to her. But when I first did that first interview, I read the first 2 books, and they really actually just blew my mind. I'd kind of heard about a lot of the stuff that she was talking about in terms of the chemtrails, and especially the macro picture, the geoengineering. But when you read the books and you see all the sources, and she really does paint this big picture It's kind of astonishing the technologies that they're working on in terms of not just working on, but actually rolling out as we speak now. In terms of using the electromagnetic spectrum not only to control the macro scale, the weather systems, uh, even causing earthquakes and other kind of natural phenomenon, really tapping into the electromagnetism that the natural world uses on that macro scale, but also on the micro scale in terms of the fact that guess what, our human bodies also use a lot of electromagnetism. And this electromagnetic system can be tweaked to influence how we think and the kinds of emotions that we feel. And so it's actually quite astounding to discover that the government has been researching how to manipulate these things, again, on the macro and the micro scale, for decades now. And they're getting better and better and better at it. And the new book, which I haven't read yet, I think it's just now coming out, so I didn't get a chance to get a copy before the interview, but I wanted to do this interview now just to kind of prep for it, and hopefully I'll have her back on here in the next month or two after I get a chance to read it, so we can really go in depth into the new material. But in the new book, she's able to take all that information and then apply it to the transhumanist movement and the nanotechnology that's really been developed in the last 5 or 10 years, and now is being rolled out into this huge technocratic panopticon that is very challenging to believe if you can't see it, if you haven't looked into it. But the fact of the matter is, and this happens to me, I find out about a new aspect of the graphene oxide or the metallic when people started sticking magnets to their arms after the vaccinations and things like that. And you look into it, and lo and behold, you can find peer-reviewed scientific studies that show that, yeah, they've been working on this kind of technology, and yeah, it uses highly magnetic materials, and yeah, they've been studying how to use graphene oxide to grow tubules inside of people's bodies and to be used as transmitters and conductors of 5G, 6G information that can then influence how the internal system works, influence how you think, influence how you feel. And then you can go and look at the patents. This is another aspect of research that once you start looking into the patents, there are things like voice-to-skull technology that she mentioned in her previous work, where they're learning how to project voices inside people's heads. They think they're going crazy. But then you look and there's a patent for the technology, and it's like, what? Why are these people working on this? And this is another thing, and I want to have a conversation a little bit more in depth. We talked about it just a little bit in this interview, but this dual use situation that's going on with humanity's technological progression. I think most people really have this feeling that science is just sort of naturally evolving, and individuals are coming up with these incredible inventions, and then they're able to make these practical applications, engineer these applications that are just so wonderful for the human experience and make our lives so much easier. And these people, these inventors, have the humanity's best interests at heart. And they go to the corporations, or they're working for the corporations, and the corporations go, wow, yeah, we can mass produce this stuff, and we can get it out there, and humanity and civilization is becoming more technological, and hence that means we're improving, we're more advanced. We have this value judgment that puts this huge amount of positivity on civilization's technological advance, and this is how most people think that our civilization is evolving towards a better place for humanity. But in fact, when you do the amount of work and the research, and for the length of time that Elana has done, she has really nailed it in terms of the fact that all new technologies come out of these classified projects. They all start with the military-industrial complex. And so the people who are in charge of the military-industrial complex, whoever those people are, right? These are black budget operations, classified. They're the ones deciding what technologies are being developed, and they have essentially unlimited funding, billions and billions of dollars from the government going into the military-industrial complex, not very well tracked, as we know from the work of Catherine Austin Fitts and others. So hundreds of billions of dollars potentially getting funneled into the creation of technologies for a purpose that is not really not really controlled by, certainly by the democracy, certainly by open debate, but instead couched inside of this whole classified defense industry. And we don't really understand where it's going. And this is another point that I wanted to make about this. There's something in science. I think a lot of people also have this perception that science progresses in a positive way. It just, science invents an invention, it's the next level of human progress as we advance towards some kind of, mystical utopia that we're all going to not have to work very hard and have everything that we need. But in fact, science goes in the direction that the scientist is looking towards. There has to be a destination that somebody determines. So who's determining the destination that all of this scientific infrastructure within the military-industrial complex is going towards? Are they focusing on harmonizing with nature so that we can build a civilization that works in harmony and sustainability with natural processes? Or, and this is what Elana has uncovered, are they working on integrating human beings, organic life, into some kind of transhumanist, techno-fascist control panopticon that they see as the kind of future that they want to manufacture, and the rest of us are just going to go along for the ride, I guess, right? I mean, what I just discussed with Elana, was talking about the fact that humanity, very shortly here, may really not have the ability to exercise free will. I mean, already there's an argument that can be made with the amount of propaganda, the amount of subliminal messaging that's all over our society. Are we really in control of our own choice-making abilities right now? So much misinformation is out there. It's so difficult to parse the real truth, the reality, from this fictitious universe that we're getting fed every day. But very soon, it's going to be more than just propaganda. It's going to be the literal ability to target individuals, to target population centers, to target groups of people, to at the very least nudge them towards thinking differently, making different choices than they would if they just were exercising their own free will. This is a very real and very serious situation that I hope that the listeners are starting to understand. And I think it's one of the most important aspects of Elana's work is to first of all understand that our human progress is being determined by a handful of people that are behind the scenes in this military-industrial complex. It's not somehow evolving for the benefit of mankind. It's evolving for the benefit of these few people that have access to these corporations and can make the choices about, what DARPA is researching and what these different scientific agencies, which are public and private both, are looking to create for the rest of civilization. What are the smart cities? What are the 5G networks? What is this metaverse? What is the virtual reality? Who's building the AIs, right? So much of this is coming out of public funding, and the public's not allowed to look and see what's going on with that funding. I also wanted to touch on, and just as a part of the scientific progression, I think that, again, people think that we're sort of materialistically evolving through this progress as science, quote unquote, this mythological science predetermines what's best for humanity, when in fact, it's actually coming out of the imagination or the psyche of the people who are in charge of funding the science. They're deciding what they're going to look for, and then they're building that out in the real world, right? And so, when Elana makes statements like there's this very narrow part of the electromagnetic spectrum that human beings can actually see and hear. And so there's a lot going on, a lot of information, and I think of it kind of like a Wi-Fi network, but within the natural Wi-Fi network, right, we're all naturally being inundated with aspects of the spectrum that are outside of our ability to see. And so this is where, and I always say this, every other culture in the history of the world has understood that there are other consciousnesses within and outside of the spectrum, and these consciousnesses then can manifest themselves in a variety of ways. Some people say, they can actually enter our bodies and affect our health. I kind of like to think of it in terms of the psyche or the archetype, that there is an archetypal world that affects how we think and our imaginations and how we dream the world into being, and then what we manifest in this three-dimensional reality after having contact with these aspects of the spectrum that are outside of our ability to directly interact with. So there is something that's working outside of this material realm that's influencing what is being produced in the material realm. And I'm about to have a conversation for next week with Paul Levy. He's got a new book coming out, but about his concept of the Witico virus. And we're going to talk about this in depth. So even though that concept I know sounds really far out, again, many cultures have found this to be true. And I think if you really look into it and if you really think about it, it takes an imagination to think about what to create, what to manifest in the three-dimensional reality. And we have all been taught that there's this sort of materialistic action that's just causing progress over time, but it doesn't really work that way. It's something to think deeply about. It's something that Elana really touches in. I think this is a difficult concept, but I think it's an important aspect of decolonizing our mind. I think when we are colonized into this empire, we've been given this way of thinking that's very materialistic, and it seriously limits our ability to tap into our own free will. So in that sense, if you think about it, a lot of these concepts of materialism have been used, I think, by the upper classes for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, to keep the lower classes from being able to tap into the free will that's allowed if you understand that you are directly connected energetically to the creation of your own reality. This is a self-empowerment that is taken from the colonizers when they colonize a culture. And so if you're interested in decolonizing your mind, then part of decolonization is really being open-minded to these aspects of how energy works, how these subtle energies work, and these esoteric concepts of creation really might be the actual way that reality works. And again, we got into it a little bit with Elana, talking about the etheric body, strengthening the etheric body in order to maintain as much free will as possible as things progress forward. But I'll be talking about that with Paul Levy again next week, so stay tuned for that. And I'll just let you know, if you want to get any of Elana's books, you can find her information at www.elanafreeland.com. And I urge you again to check that out. I would read all three of the books. Again, I think Engineered Transhumanism is just coming out. Once I get a chance to read it, I'll invite her back and we'll have a more of an in-depth conversation. So we'll be looking forward to that. And as always, you can go to www.theshiftnow.com to get more information about this show, hours of free content, and subscribe to the feature-length versions of all of my episodes for just $6 a month. You can also find The Shift with Doug McKenty on YouTube, Facebook, Odyssey, Twitter at @dmckenty. And I'm also at Rockfin. Rockfin is becoming my favorite go-to in terms of checking out the videos. And I'm on SoundCloud if you just want to get the audio. But go to the website, theshiftnow.com, and it'll all be right there at your fingertips. So thanks again, everybody, for listening. And we'll catch you again next week. Take care, everybody.